very good evening and a warm welcome to the show tonight. We are coming to you from the Kampala Serena Conference Center Nile Room, and tonight we have another personal story. But just before we get into that, the frontal lobe is a vital part of our brain that helps with our consciousness as well as functions that appear uniquely human. Some of its vital roles are memory, attention, motivation, and numerous daily tasks. It is a wonder, then, that our guest tonight, who comes escorted with her parents, is able to share her story and what she went through. I'll very quickly introduce my guests. Nelly Nakitende, the lady in green. Is that green? That's green. The lady in green, escorted by her parents, Mr. and Mrs. Mchibi. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming to share this story. We have Nelly's sister, who is in the audience, Marjorie. Marjorie, thank you for coming as well. And finally, right next to me, we have Dr. Kiriawide. Thank you once again for coming.
It's a pleasure.
All right, let's say it as it is. Well, thank you once again for joining us. I don't know who to start with. Do I start with the parents or Nelly? The parents. Yes.
The parents.
What happened?
I'll start.
You start.
Nelly was delivered by a cesarean section in Vilika Hospital in June 1997. She grew up like a normal child until she turned 10 years. By then, she had joined the P7. She had registered to sit for her UNEB exam, PLE. Then somehow from June, she started getting some on and off headaches and high fevers. And by then we were in Mbale, so we took her to some of the best hospitals in Mbale for around 1 month. Then one day, things were not working out as we anticipated. She was not responding to the treatment, so they advised us to drive her to Kampala. We brought her to Kampala at the end of July. We came on a weekend, so we went to one of the famous children's hospital in Wandegeya. She was admitted, treated for 2 days, and she was discharged. Now, before we departed to say we are going back at Mbale, we said, let us have lunch. So we went to a restaurant, and it is from that little restaurant, when they had served us food, that all of a sudden Nelly stopped talking and her right hand stopped functioning. We were shocked. We rushed her back to the hospital where they had discharged us, but the doctor told us that it seems you didn't bring up your daughter well, that's why she's misbehaving. We said, no, it has never happened to us like this. We said, no. So we went to a hotel and slept, and one of our friends called us and told us, you know what, can you go to IHK and try out and see what's going on with that girl?
What was the doctor treating her for at this children's hospital?
It was, I think, malaria and some infections, which we really didn't understand. So we were wondering what was going on. So somebody recommended take her to IHK. And in the morning, Monday morning, we drove her to IHK. And immediately the doctors looked at her. They said, no, this girl needs to be admitted. They admitted her on that Monday. But surprisingly, in the evening of that night, we didn't sleep. Nelly started convulsing seriously, and she convulsed the whole night till morning. In the morning, they recommended we take her for a CT scan. So they gave us an ambulance and we drove her to Kampala Hospital. Immediately, they put her in a CT scan and they told us she has a problem with the brain. So they gave us the images and we went back to IHK, and then they called Dr. Kiriawide, who came that evening. And what happened from that date, it has been a journey of 11 years of challenges, but with hope and a lot of support from different people. And we have seen Nelly through from that. We spent 2 months in the hospital at IHK. And after the 2 months, we were discharged. We went back to Mbale. Immediately went back. She said she has to sit her PLE exam. So we are wondering, but the doctor told us it is okay if she can, you allow her. We supported her. When we reached the school said no, she's going to fail, and our school is going, you know, to be degraded. So it was somehow disturbing. So we engaged the district in Mbale, and finally the headmaster allowed her to sit, and we got some support from UNEB because she needed some little time, not like any other normal child. So they gave, UNEB sent somebody especially for her during the exam, and she sat and passed with the second grade without any failure. So we took her to one of the boarding school in Mbale College. It is a boarding school, mixed, and we asked the father by then who was there. We requested that Nelly cannot be at school full time, so we could put her in a day, and we could be dropping her every day and picking her in the evening.
Okay, I'm curious at this point, Nelly, what I've seen pictures that your mother shared. I don't know if you can show us the pictures again. Marjorie has the pictures. Okay, while Marjorie gets the pictures, you were in school. Was this after the surgery was done?
After the surgery, and they had removed the bone.
So they'd removed the bone, yes. And see, I'm seeing you put your hair aside very calmly. So you were in school with the bone out.
Yeah.
What was that like?
When I reached school, I was the center of attention. Everyone really wanted to know what happened. Where have you been all this long, and why do you come back looking like this? It wasn't so discouraging for me because I had a lot of support from parents, but at some point I used to cry because it's not like I wanted this. I didn't want it, but
right.
Sometimes we just have to cope. So I had to cope. I had to fit in despite the way I was looking. I had to settle in. I had to go back to the old friends I had, even if they used to run away from me. So it was quite tough, but I went through it.
It takes a lot of strength to insist to sit for PLE. A lot of us don't even like school.
Yeah.
But you insisted on sitting for your PLE.
I did.
Why?
First of all, I hated the fact of staying in a class because I've never stayed in a class before. And despite that I studied at such a tender age, being 10 and you're in P7, everyone looked at me and was like, no, you're still young, you can still sit and wait for another year. Besides, you're just from the hospital. But I had already registered, my parents had paid money, and I couldn't just sit there and watch all that going to waste. Even if I had studied for one term in the whole year, I knew I could make it. I wasn't different from any other person.
Do you remember when you started having problems? Age 10, do you remember anything?
Yes, I do. I actually used to have really strong headaches that I couldn't see in bright light. So during that, I was actually there for a week because by then my parents had gone for a burial. My mom had lost her sister, so they had gone for a burial. And during that week, I would not leave the dormitory because when I left the dormitory, the light alone, I felt like my head would split. So it was better if I stayed somewhere dark. And I remember one of my friends came to the dormitory and told me, but it seems you have malaria, why don't you go to the school nurse? I remember for that whole week, I was subjected to quinine the whole week because the nurse actually thought it was malaria. But our matron called the dose and told him, you know what, this girl might die when we are just looking at her. You need to call her parents. So they made a phone call to my dad, but he wasn't in Mbale by then. So by the next day he was at school. So when they picked me from school, they admitted me to St. Martin's in Mbale. I was there for 3 days on treatment of malaria. I went back home. I didn't sleep that night because most of the nights I would just convulse because we didn't know actually what was wrong. I remember one night I used to sleep with Majo. So that night I convulsed really badly that I had to be taken to the hospital at midnight.
Mrs. Muchibi, what was the worst period for you that you remember?
The worst period for me was when she was in hospital. The first time in Mbale. That day we slept in hospital and we moved at night coming to Kampala. That night she convulsed a lot and they had to call the doctor, but the doctor was saying, wait until morning and we discharge you formally. And I was like, doctor, we cannot wait for the procedure formally. Surely, you're seeing the condition. And actually, we left that hospital without any document because we couldn't wait. Just had to throw everything in the car and drove to Kampala. Yeah, that was the worst moment. And the second worst moment was when we were in IHK, when they are taking her for a CT scan in Kampala Hospital. When I heard the doctor saying, keep calling her. If you stop calling her and allow her to sleep, she'll not come back. I was going with them, but I decided to leave. I decided to leave. I couldn't stand. I couldn't sit anywhere. I had to sleep on the hospital floor. I wanted that coldness in the body. And I waited from there. I remember the cleaners coming to tell me, leave this place, we are going to pour water on you. I said, just pour the water. But I'm not leaving.
One incident which stands out for me, there was a time I think she was in her senior 5. That time I was staying alone, so she had come to visit me at my place. It was a Sunday. I think Daddy was at school, Mommy was a bit far. So she came to my place, we had lunch, and she was in the sitting room, lying on the mat. So after lunch, I was cleaning, and I went outside on the veranda. So in the process of my cleaning, I heard like some noise inside. I was like, what's happening? So when I went back inside, she was lying down lifeless with a very serious convulsion. And that was one of the scariest moments for me. I had my phone with me, but I couldn't locate Daddy's number. I couldn't carry her because she was heavy. So what I did, I just tried to undress her for her to be able to get some air. And then after a few minutes, I gathered myself and called Daddy, and he was there in a very short period of time. And then we rushed her to hospital. It was one of the scariest moments for me. And I know at that point she was okay because she was on medication and all that, but still thinking of what could have happened, maybe she could have been at home alone and all that. So yeah, it hasn't been easy, but she's a strong girl. That's one thing. She always inspires me through all this pain and being a teenager with this scar and all those things. It gets to her sometimes, but she manages to live with it.
Wow. All right, Dr. Kiriabwire, please explain how a thought that this could be malaria leaves Nellie with a scar that big.
Well, there are very many diseases which can present, which can start off with a fever. And I think that's one of the biggest problems that we have, that when a patient comes to you and says, I've got a fever, there are so many options. And as a doctor, you have to go picking out which one is the most likely cause. Now, in Nellie's case, she had developed infection within the nose, in the sinuses of the nose. Most of us know it as sinusitis. I've got sinusitis, which to many people is a simple disease. But if you don't manage it well, if you don't treat it well, that bacteria can become quite aggressive and can eat away into the brain, When it gets into the brain, problems begin. And I think the journey that Nellie has walked is because those bacteria moved from the nose and entered into the brain. Commonly, what happens is that the nose is designed in a way that when the air comes in, it goes through the sinuses. The sinuses are like big chambers in the bone. They just open, and air enters, they are warmed in there, and then goes into the lungs. So when you breathe, actually the air, even if it's a cold day, the air going into the lungs is actually warm. And that way you don't get big problems. That's why if you find yourself in a winter or something like that, getting a pneumonia is much easier because the air going into the lungs is cold. Now when it comes to the warm air, the problem is the air entering is not necessarily clean air. You've got dust, you've got particles, and those particles carry with them bacteria. So for many people, especially if it's not draining well, if there's any problem, if you've got a sinus problem before, when it enters in, it just leaves the bacteria there. And that bacteria starts growing. Now, because it is hidden in an area somewhere, it can grow and multiply and become a big problem for you before you even notice. By the time you get the fevers, that bacteria has been growing there for some time.
Well, I have a question. That could be any of us. So why Nellie? But we'll take that question after the break. So let's take a quick break.
We offer professional barber, hairdressing at Lugogo Mall, Garden City, Forest Mall, Oasis Mall, and Acacia Mall. Sparkle Salon, professional, affordable, and quality services.
Welcome back. We're coming to you from the Kampala Serena Conference Center, Nile Room. Dr. Kidiabwila is asking you why Nellie, because that could just easily describe anything that's happening in all our bodies.
Well, there's no clear-cut, fixed thing that would say this is the patient who will get it and this is the patient who won't. However, people who have had problems with sinus disease tend to have a higher risk of this happening. But that doesn't mean that someone who doesn't have sinus problems will not get it. So as a medical team, you really have to have a high suspicion rate. You have to be thinking about it in the back of your minds, especially if you give medicine. For instance, you're treating malaria, give medicine, and somehow the patient doesn't seem to get better. Any patient who gets a convulsion, that is a warning sign that something bad is going on.
But how does she lose the use of her arm and she's unable to speak, and the doctor says you raised the child badly?
I can't speak on behalf of my colleague because situations can only be judged when you are there. Anyone who suddenly cannot speak, and especially if you can't speak and your right side is not working, that is a clear sign that there's a big problem going on. The left side of the body is what runs speech. So we speak from the left side of our brains, and we move the right side of the body using the left side of the brain. I hope that is easier to. So speech is on the left, movement of the right side is on the left as well. So when someone comes with two signs showing that the left side is having a problem, you have to take it seriously. But of course, as I said, it really depends on situations. I don't know what the conversation was about. So it's hard to judge now. But for anybody who, if you have got a patient, they stop talking, they can't move the right side, there's a problem in the brain.
Okay. So I'm still trying to figure out what do you then tell Nellie's parents happened to Nellie? What do you say happened or is wrong?
Well, what happened is that infection which was in the sinus, in the bone, kept on growing. And because they are not getting the right treatment for it, it became more and more aggressive. And infections can even eat away bone. They are that aggressive. They can eat away the bone and enter into the brain. Once they enter into the brain is a good place for them to stay, so they just multiply. And that's what happened with Nellie, is that at the beginning she had a headache, there was a fever, we treated malaria as a medical team. Unfortunately, that was not the right treatment, so it became aggressive. It ate through, and that's when she started, getting seizures, not able to talk, not able to move. That's when the medical team starts telling you that keep her awake, because you don't know whether when she sleeps she'll wake up, because now the infection is in the brain. So as a family, of course, there's no way you can easily pick that this is what is going on. This is really the field for the doctors. However, if you're having treatment and you see something is just not going right, you always get a second opinion. Don't stick to once, twice, the third time. By the time you reach the second, third time, go and seek an opinion from someone else, because that way you will be able to balance out what they are doing.
Okay. Well, so everybody who has always said I have sinuses or my sinuses is probably now thinking,
Yes. No, it's not as common. The reason being that most people who have got sinus problems treat them well. So when you have got a sinus problem and you treat it well, then it's not going to spread. You kill the bacteria where it is, life is okay. The problem is, if it seems you've got a sinus issue, it becomes unusual. Usually you have maybe 1 or 2 days, it settles down. You go into 1 week, it's still a problem, you are not getting any change. See an ENT surgeon. An ear, nose, and throat surgeon will sort your problems out. It's good to once in a while see a specialist, because their index of suspicion is high. So they'll be able to tell you, and they'll be able to treat it in the right way. Remaining in a clinic where there's no ENT specialist and keeping on with treatment may not be the right thing to do.
Okay. Well, just quickly, and now we're talking about sinuses. What are the presentation for sinuses?
Most people get a blocked nose, and with it a lot of secretions. So you're always blowing your nose, it's blocked all the time. Sometimes they get pain over where the sinus is, which is on the side of the cheeks and the front bone. So you can get pain there, but mainly it is congestion. They wake up in the morning, they're congested. Many of them, as they go through the day, the sinus actually opens out and they're okay. So if you have that as a tendency, you always have the suspicion that you can get infection in that place.
Because people begin to say I have morning allergy.
Well, the morning allergy, now this is where it becomes a trick, because the morning allergy is what tilts into a sinus and a sinusitis. So morning allergy, if you have grown with it, you know how it presents. It is a common thing. You know what it's like. Once it starts getting out of its usual characteristics, seek medical advice.
Mrs. Micho, you have pictures of Nellie that Marjorie had gone to find for us.
Okay.
Could you tell us about them? Yeah.
I have a picture of Nellie when she was 8 years. She didn't have any problem apart from flu. The on and off flus that we ignored and thought is just a flu from school that students can have, and then they are not treated. Yeah. But
Okay.
by then she had not yet got this problem. And I have another picture here of Nellie. She was in senior 1 at Timbale College. And by this time they had operated her and removed the bone, but they had not yet replaced it because they wanted it to heal first. And then this other picture, it's of Nellie also, without the bone. This period I was graduating, and it wasn't easy for me reading books and then thinking about Nellie all the time without the bone at school. He would sit here and say, I will just have a call saying they have hit her on the head. This picture I'm holding here is very encouraging. Nellie was in HSC at Chambogo College. She was in senior 5. She contested to be a head girl of the school. And actually she was taking the race. If it was not for the teachers to get worried that she may not handle books and responsibility of being a head girl, and then they planted another girl on her so that they leave her, because their worry was, can she handle 2 things, surely being a head girl and then reading books? But she managed to take her in the race. This girl won her by only 2 votes.
Wow.
I like this photo so much.
Nellie, what's your biggest fear?
Well,
You look like everything else is... Yeah.
not really. Sometimes before I make such decisions, I really have a lot of fear. I can get really nervous. Sometimes I can get panic attacks. I'm not so sure about myself. Sometimes I'm like, will I handle? Will I really manage? But no, I can do this. I went through that. I can still do it. So I keep reminding myself of what I went through to get through what is in front of me.
Okay. They mentioned that was it S1 when you were wearing, is it a breast?
Yes.
What is it called? It's over there.
It's a helmet.
It's a helmet.
Yeah.
And you were going to school without, what was missing?
The
bone.
bone.
The bone.
Yeah.
And you were wearing that to class.
Yeah, I was.
The biggest fear we had is that because he didn't have the forebone and is in secondary school, so we thought maybe the student may not understand her problem and maybe they could knock her or do anything bad. And we didn't want that. So before we took her to that school, the headmaster gave us an opportunity to talk to the class members. And we told them about Nelly and how she doesn't have this bone and how they need to support her and take good care of her. And indeed, the students were very good. So in the first few days of starting school, she went with this on recommendation of the doctor. And there is also, I think, a premier player of football, I think a goalkeeper, who has this on his head always. And so it was encouraging when doctor told us that a man who is even in football and has it, we encouraged Nelly also to go with it at school. But I think for only a few days.
They're trying to make me seem intelligent by knowing. I'm told he's an Arsenal player, PWJK.
Yes, yes.
Okay. You were saying.
So he put it on for just a few days, and then the student started calling her a border rider. So she came back home and said, no, I will not, I will manage without it. And that is how it went. So a few days, he threw it back in our house, and then he started going at school without it. Our worry was what could happen if somebody hit her or knock her down.
Okay.
That's why I'm
If she got an accident where in that area where there is no bone, the brain would have no protection whatsoever. And so the helmet is a very useful tool because it helps, it mimics the bone. It helps us to get some form of protection.
All right.
Yes.
People, please wear helmets when you. What's been the cost of all of this? Everybody is shaking their head. Even Marjorie is shaking her head.
You know, as a family, it could have been too much if we didn't have the supporting team. Right from Dr. Chidiawire, they have been there for us. And a number of people. Because by then we were living in Mbale, so we couldn't every time come to Kampala. We went to Chua Hospital, and Chua Hospital gave us a backstop that whenever, in a case of emergency, Maja told you about how Nelly fell down and was carried to the hospital. It was a Sunday. We couldn't come to Kampala, so we took her to Chua Hospital. And Chua Hospital has been very, very supportive of Nelly. And when we shifted and came to Kampala in 2012, they directed us to go to Katalemwa Children's Home every last Friday of the month. We had been going there, taking Nelly, until last year when they gave us a span of 1 year now to go there. So they have been very supportive. A lot of people have been supportive, even at the schools where she has been, the family, a lot of people. So the cost implication, I know, if it was for us as a family to deal with it, it could be too much. But we have a lot of people who have supported us to cut down much of those costs.
Dr. Kiawe, is there an estimate that you could give us, just so that somebody understands how costly this can be?
Oh no!
in terms of, for example, a surgery or not the whole.
Anything to do with the brain is fairly costly, and hence the need for you to try and prevent it happening. Staying in hospital, she was in for 2 months.
2 months.
In IHK, she had, I think, 2 operations.
2 operations.
Yes.
But in
Six.
total,
She had
6.
In
The
total, she
total
has had
was
6
6 so far.
operations.
So far.
and she still has one more to go. If you cannot compute that kind of expense, it's exponential. The kind of medication that we use. I'll give an example of the medication. I think one of the vials is about 150,000. You use 12 of them a day. You use that for 14, 15 days, just the medicine alone. And that's one of them. If you combine it, I think she used it with another one, which is about 50,000 times 2 is about 100. So you're using about 250,000 a single day for 10 days. That's a lot of money, and that is just medicine alone. So you can see that the cost of treating infection in the brain is huge. And that doesn't include what happens afterwards, because she's had to be on medicine for the last 10 years or so.
All right, let's take
And
a
maybe
short break.
if you are aware, she has a tube.
Before we do, okay.
She has a tube. This doctor, I think, will explain.
She has a tube
Yes.
somewhere.
The doctor knows better. But it runs from the brain to the stomach. For the last 10 years, that tube is there.
All right, let's take a short break. And I think we'll start from there when we return. Welcome back. We are coming to you from the Kampala Serena Conference Center, Nile Room. Let's just very quickly get to the tube. Please tell me about the tube.
Now, what happens is whenever you're dealing with the brain, one of the things is that, especially if it's an infection, the need for repeated operations is high. And the number of operations that need to be done are many. Many families have this impression that you're going to have one operation, everything is going to be okay, and you walk out of hospital the next day. When they start seeing that you need another one, they give up. And Nelly is a good example of, if you don't give up, you get a good result. So as a family, you need to settle in and say, I'm going to walk this journey. It doesn't matter what happens. Because when you do that, you get a good result. The tube is just helping to remove excess fluid, because the infection blocked all the passages in the brain where normal fluid should pass. So we needed to get a tube to change that. Now, it's the same as the tubes we use for young children who have got big heads. But that tube, many people feel that it's going to cause them a lot of problems. I think Nelly is a good example. She's been with it for 10 years. She's graduated from school. If dad hadn't spoken about it, no one would ever know. We don't restrict what she does. I've never sat with her and said, don't do this. So those tubes may sound very big and very scary, but actually they're very helpful. And once they're in, they do a great job. You'll never even know they're there.
When you said tube, my mind went to a catheter and all related tubes. Nelly, so you have a tube. What does it feel like? Do you ever notice you have it or think about it?
Yeah, I do notice when I have it, because there are times when I sit there and think, and then I have to put my hand here and I'm like, okay, this is a tube. Then I bring it back. Then there are times I feel a little bit of pain where it passes. Yeah, so.
What's been the most difficult thing for you about this whole experience?
It might be the people I associate with every day. Most people don't really understand. So the first time someone sees you, someone is like, oh, that must have been an accident. Someone will say, nga bamukola bubi, abantu baloka. You get all kinds. People they assume. And then there are those who look at you and they just don't want to associate with you. This actually, I've had an experience of it while looking for jobs. There are people who look at you and they are like, they look at you and you read their minds. They are like, no, I can't have someone who looks like that. I can't have someone who looks like that. So it really hurts me because I didn't call for any of this. It's just the way I am. So if you don't accept me for how I look like, then I don't know. Sometimes it makes me cry because there are people who give me lots of nicknames. Like at campus, I used to be called Scarface. The first time I heard that, I broke down and cried because no one has really called me that. It just hurts.
You've managed to soldier through. I don't know how. I think the worst places are usually the classrooms.
Yeah.
So from primary through secondary school, through the university.
It's graduating this December.
You're graduating in December. That's a lot of strength.
Yeah, it is.
What does the future look like, Dr. Kiawi?
Oh, the future is bright because the infection is controlled, and I mean she recovered really well enough to get through school. So apart from those people who fear how she looks, she's actually not different from any other person walking down the street. I mean, we just need to encourage people not to look to judge a book by its cover, and always try and get to know who she is and find out that really there's really no difference. We do intend to fix the way she looks because, of course, as you can see, you cannot get that message to everybody. So we want to make sure that that which at the moment is standing out is fixed. We can actually put an artificial plate there to make it look exactly like the opposite side so that you can't tell. But she's not different from anyone. She can achieve anything she wants to achieve.
She actually
needs to aim for the
She
for the
actually
top.
is different from most people I know because she has such resilience. The first time I met Nelly, she's I don't know if it's made you stronger that you're such a go-getter, which a lot of people your age are actually not anymore. I think that's the difference that I see.
Well, we need to encourage her to do that. I think in the world there is nothing that can stand in your way.
Yeah.
You know, and it's good that you pick your strength from what you've been through. Use that to go and get whatever you want to get. Because from a medical point of view, we have nothing, no restrictions.
Oh. What would you like to say, Marjorie, to us as we prepare to close?
Yeah, one last thing maybe I would like to say is that Nelly, I'm very proud of you, and I love you so much. And that through all this, it has been good. Through the ups and downs, we pray as a family. And the people who have been there, like Daddy has said, Dr. Chiyawi, thank you so much. And one other thing I know about Nelly, she never forgets to take her medicine. Every single day. Like, she's so much focused on what's to come and what she wants to achieve. And I think that's a very good thing for her. And all I can say is that as a family, we are proud of you and we are here for you. And we are always going to be there for you.
She looks like she's used to hearing these things. Mrs. Michiri, what would you like to say?
First of all, I would like to appreciate God, because in all this it has been God. Secondly, we have been together as parents, together really for Nelly. That's another thing, because at times some people just have some misunderstandings here and there when a child gets sickness that is going to take longer. And I appreciate the headmasters in the schools where she has been. Apart from the one of P7, we had issues, we had to engage special needs at the district until we reached at the ministry that she had to sit PLOE. But I thank God we went through it and she sat. And what they thought that she was going to bring a bad grade to the school, actually she performed. And their students were there full time to the last hour, and they didn't perform like her. And then I appreciate the headmaster for Mbali College. Wow, she was such a good headmaster. He's a father. He's called Father Lacon. This is a time when the father was working in Kampala and we were in Imbale at Senior 4. I would take her to school in the morning, then pick her after preps, that is after 10. But any time she would fall sick, that father would put her in his vehicle, drive straight to Chua, and then call me, find us at the hospital. He would not meander around like, where are you? We were bringing the child. No, he would just go straight to the hospital and just call, follow us. We are going to hospital.
Wow.
I just appreciate that. And secondly, I appreciate Nelly herself. She has been so strong and so encouraging to the extent that you cannot even imagine what she does. You think she cannot do something, but she shows you she can do it, whether you like it or not. She's this kind of person who tries something. She has been trying to do things, must catch up with the world. She must catch up with the world. And this has made her not stay in any class until she completed her studies, despite the sickness that other people do not have, but she has went through it.
What would you say to any parent who is watching you?
What I would like to tell the parents out there is not to ignore the small sicknesses in their children. Because Nelly started with this kind of flu thing right in nursery. She would get a flu, she would come home with a flu. We take her to the clinic, they give her some treatment, we give her some treatment, and then we think it's a flu. And up to P7, for us, we didn't know she had a sinus, because we take her to the clinic, the flu is treated. After 3 days, it comes back. We think there are students there at school who are not treated, so the flu has come back. And then it would be controlled in holidays. Maybe I think even the morning coldness would even worsen it, because when she would be off school, it would at least subsidize.
Okay.
And then for us, we would say maybe at home there are no people to give her the flu. So parents should not ignore those kind of
those
things.
little
Yeah.
things. All right. Chile?
Want to thank you, Josephine, for inviting us to be part and parcel of this show. Two, to encourage a lot of parents out there. Nelly is our role model to many parents. We have been going to Katalemwa, where parents, you find them very, very discouraged. But when we tell them about the story of Nelly, some of them will pick up, and these children can be turned around if we support them, if we love them.
Okay.
And we care for them. Lastly, it is the gifted hand
The doctor.
of Dr. Kiriawire and his partners in the circle, because he has been recommending different doctors at different levels who have been supporting us, and they are very, very supportive. So Dr. Kiriawire, publicly I want to acknowledge you and to thank you for being there for us for the last 11 years. And we know, we are seeing the work of your hands, and we are grateful for that.
All right. Well, after receiving such high praise, Dr. Kiriawire, what would you like to say?
It is the team that worked
team,
together
yes.
and worked well. And so I receive it on their behalf as well. I think that for my side, it is just to encourage people that there is an impression that when you get anything that happens to your brain, that the world has ended, that you cannot achieve anything, that you are now going to be a second-class citizen. And I think Nelly makes it clear that if you persist, if you fight, if you know that's a journey that you're going to walk together to achieve, you want to achieve big things, then you can actually do it. All you need to do is to put in the effort, and you can see 6 operations is effort. You need to put in the effort, you need to stay with the, on the journey, keep strong, and you'll achieve anything you want to achieve. And I think, so my message is, whenever you have a problem with the brain, don't give up early. Work until the doctor tells you you cannot. And most doctors won't. So work until you achieve what you want to achieve.
All right. Nelly, finally?
I don't really have what to say right now.
Oh, but you must say something.
Well, I just want to appreciate my mom and dad, my sister, doctor. They have really supported me. I wouldn't be this far if it weren't for all the support I've been getting. Not forgetting God. Most people see me as a miracle, because the person who saw me 11 years ago in that hospital bed, and that person sees me now, can't actually believe I'm still alive. Most people thought I was dead. No one had a slight hope that I would actually pull through. But I thank God that I'm actually here 11 years later.
We're all glad that you're here and that you're able and willing to share your story with us.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for coming, Dr. Kiyabuye, to give some insight into what actually happened, and to the parents and Nellie and your sister for coming to share this story. Well, that brings us to the end of our show for tonight. Coming up is NTV Weekend Edition.
Renew your monthly basic bouquet subscription of 18,000 shillings before it expires. Then enjoy 3 free days only on
Star Times. Enjoy digital life.